Well, good morning and welcome to the Underhood Show. My name's Josh Profit. I'm the service director here at Mel Hambelton Ford, and today I got a special guest with me, Casey Gresseth with BG. So good morning, Casey. How are things for you?
Yeah, things are going good.
Yeah.
Is now a good time to address the rumors?
Well, let's go ahead. Let's address them.
There's a lot of chatter online about how I'm the favorite recurring guest.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is definitely a lot of chatter about that. And, I really enjoy having you on the show. I know with your crazy busy schedule and stuff that you have going on, that it's hard to find time to get up here, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and your guest. And, we really enjoy using BG products and love what you guys have to offer and bring to the table in that market. So we're going to get into some of that today for sure. But before we do that, this is a call-in show, 316-462-3673. That's a number to jump on the air here with us and ask us a question live. I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to throw out there, and whoever wins the question will get a package. But then I think today, with BG being here with us, we're going to maybe increase the package a little bit, inflate the package, depending upon what we got going on. So got a couple of trivia questions. We did this last week, Casey, and it enticed the callers to call in instead of not just chat online, about what was going on. So, but it is a call-in show. We want to hear from you. So 316-462-3673. For each and every caller that calls into the show, we give away a great package, which consists of the Works, which is an oil change and tire rotation. We use Motorcraft oil and filter products here at Mel Hambelton Ford. While we're performing that, we're also going to complete a multi-point inspection on that vehicle, checking over the brakes, tires, steering, suspension, all the safety-related components, just making sure that the vehicle's geared up and ready to go for that next 5,000 miles of driving. You'll also receive $10 to Mel's Diner, so you can get yourself something to eat and drink while you're here with us at the Big Corner this morning, when you come in, as well as nitrogen for your tires, so you get complete nitrogen, so you get all the great benefits that nitrogen has to offer. And then a BG products package, which is going to consist of a can of MOA or motor oil additive for your engine oil, and then CF5 for your fuel system. Again, just getting that vehicle geared up and ready to go. So with that being said, let's get the phones ringing. So
sounds good to me.
I've got a couple of topics that I wanted to talk about this morning. First, I will address Delbert says, good morning, guys. So good morning. And then we've got Jeff Coates says, good morning, Josh. Where's Phil? Well, Phil is in Wheatland, Missouri. He's at the USMTS. He's running at Lucas Oil. They had a show, I think it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so far, I've been getting some text, and I think he's definitely, for those guys running that USMTS circuit, that's what they do. And so the weekend warrior, so-called weekend warrior, to go out and hang with them, like it sounds like they're hanging with them. I think he's having a pretty good time so far. So
nice.
got the final part of the show tonight, and I'm sure he's very excited for that as well. So definitely having a good time out there. So, and then I've got a question on here from Jeff. It says, can a weak battery cause you to lose power while driving? So there's a lot of variables, I guess, that would go into that. A battery, anytime you're talking electrical stuff, man, there's a lot of different weird things that can happen from that side of it. So I don't know exactly when you say lose power, if you mean actually power as in from the powertrain or just power from electrical components. But a weak battery can cause a lot of issues. The alternator, its job is to really use or to supply all the voltage, but then the battery stabilizes that voltage. And so a vehicle can run, but depending upon what loads you have and everything like that, just off the alternator, but depending upon your loads and how you're using it and the demand on the electrical system, you can get a lot of weird things going on from a bad battery. So that's definitely one thing, especially in these newer vehicles, that you really don't want to mess around with is voltage or electrical, circuits or low voltage, because the way all these modules are in these vehicles. I mean, a new vehicle today can have 50 plus modules easy. And so, and
A
they're
technician, you
yeah,
almost have to be like a
IT guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
and it is very much so. And so, with all the different systems in here, voltage is so crucial. And if it gets out of whack one way or the other, you could burn up a module pretty easy, and it gets pretty expensive from that side of things. So,
well, and I imagine it's you know, with things like that, it's tempting to just go buy a battery and see if it takes care of it. But batteries aren't cheap, and it would definitely be worthwhile to take it in and have an actual inspection done, have it diagnosed by a technician. Because if you don't need a battery, man, you could be putting that money towards what's actually going wrong with the vehicle. So
yeah. So he follows that up and he says, my radio shuts off and sounds like the car dies, then back like it's never happened. So if the only symptom that you're seeing is the actual radio itself, I would say that there's probably more likely something going on with the radio and not so much the battery. But you know, that's the battery is something that we can check and just see its condition. That's something that you know, degradation is something that can be diagnosed through some specific testers that we have to be able to see what the life is like on that battery and where it's at in that state of life. So, but let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Craig. Craig, you're on live with Under the Hood. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Craig. And I was wondering, I was in there yesterday and got an oil change, and they told me they had no oil change specials going on. And today I got an email saying that it was $49.95 that worked.
Yeah,
and I paid $80 yesterday. So
yeah. So what went out this morning? We did do a coupon blast this morning. The advisors were unaware of that, but that's something that we set up just periodically throughout. And after it was October 1st, we did raise the price of our oil change services just to meet demands. I mean, Casey, you're in the industry as well. And I mean, everything, you go buy a stick of lumber, you go buy just about anything anymore. And the cost of goods is just going up so much, especially on oils. That's one of the things that's been hit pretty hard as well. But then also a lot of consumers or people in the industry, an oil change is something that you have to be very competitive with, because there are a lot of people that offer it, and then there's also a lot of different ways you can do an oil change. I mean, as far as the oil and filter, that's going to be the same, with the exception of the quality of it. But as far as, changing oil and replacing the filter and replacing the oil, everybody has that part of the process, labor wise, is going to be about the same. But when you talk about the product that you put back in it and using a quality product and what that has to offer, I mean, that's right up your alley, Casey, on, what different places offer and how that affects the vehicle long term.
Yeah. My guys and I are in and out of, hundreds of shops a week in Kansas here. And one of the things that's been a big pain point for a lot of our stores this year, dealers and independents and fleets alike, is that, most of them have had 3, 4, even 5 price increases on oil this year with the fluctuating price of petroleum and stuff like that. And Josh is absolutely right. It's really easy to think of oil change as being such a basic service that, like, an oil change is an oil change. But, I get to see what a lot of shops do in terms of their raw materials that they use and how they go about getting the price down to, a $30 oil change is definitely different than what you're going to get at a well-reviewed certified shop like Mel Hambelton. And there's even some shops that use recycled oil.
Yeah. So we can even talk about just the different types of oil, whether it's recycled oil or conventional oil or a semi-synthetic oil, or, all the way up to synthetic oils. There's a difference in that product that goes back in those vehicles. And I can assure you one thing, we're not the cheapest place in town, and I don't want to be the cheapest place in town, but what I do want to offer is quality. And what we put in, what we put in consumers' vehicles, I want to make sure that it's, that it's what needs to go in there. So,
and I just wanted to say that the service was excellent. Everybody was very nice, and I understand now. I live in Newton, but I wish that I would have just waited till today. But that's good.
Well,
You guys do a great job. Thank you.
So we'll, as part of calling into the show, you do receive a free service as well, and I'll get back with it and look up the specifics on your vehicle. I'm not sure what the vehicle was or what type of oil it took or anything like that, because we do get into, especially hybrids, they take a 0-20 oil, and that's all a full synthetic oil, and nobody really understands that. They think that it's just a regular oil change, but the cost of the goods, 0-20, when we reviewed in October, I mean, we were literally losing about $10 a service at that old price. And,
really?
Yeah, as a consumer, for us, when we are purchasing products like that, that price that we put out there, we really try to make it a consistent price and not have to go back and alter it or change it. And because you don't want a customer to come in and one time the price be this, and then the next time it be this, and then, the next time, because you got to have consistency to provide good customer service. But then in addition to that, every time we buy a drum of oil or a barrel of oil, or however, we get it, whether it's in bulk or individual quarts, depending upon what it is, we pay a different price for it. I mean, every time. It's never consistent. Go ahead.
My truck is a 2011 F-150, and they said it used 8 quarts, so it cost like $10 more, but
yeah,
that's cool though.
Yeah, and so I'll take a look at that and review it and go from there. And then the other thing too is that I wanted to talk about is the material that's going into it, but then also what you do in addition to that service. As part of the process that we have is that each and every vehicle that comes on our service drive, we're checking alignments, we're checking tread depths, we're checking for recalls, the multi-point inspection that gets performed. We're going over the tires, the brakes, the steering, the suspension, everything safety related on that vehicle to make sure it's good to go. We're topping off all the other fluids on the vehicle. We're filling the tires and putting those back to specified pressures. And so it really does make a difference. And like I said, after the show, I'll go through and review your RO and see kind of what the deal was. But yeah, as far as what you bought yesterday and the coupon that went out today, hey, I'm sorry about that, but we got to put stuff out there every once in a while, as far as services and coupons and stuff like that. So appreciate the call.
You guys are top notch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call and thanks for the comments. All right.
All right. Bye.
Can I share a quick story with you on that note? I think one of the things that I've really noticed over the past few years is, customer perception of what a multi-point inspection is varies a lot, right?
Yes.
Because everybody does some sort of an inspection when they do an oil change, but the quality of that inspection makes a big difference. And it's easy sometimes to look at that as like, oh yeah, of course, inspection, but we had a friend of mine who will remain nameless,
anonymous,
had his vehicle serviced at a shop that will remain nameless. Not in the local region here. It was further northwest or east, but recently had his vehicle in for an oil change. Did tire rotation, did the multi-point inspection. Everything came back with green check marks on the sheet. 2 weeks ago, he called me and asked if I would come over and look at his vehicle because it was making funny noises and didn't want to move very much. Got to the stop sign in his neighborhood and the pedal went straight to the floor. The brake pedal did. And we had it towed to the local Ford dealer in that region. And as it turned out, the brake pads were metal to metal.
Oh, no.
So they were so worn that one of them had actually fallen off somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
And, it's just the piston and the caliper pushing into the rotor. And so because of that, not only was it super dangerous, I mean, he could have gotten in a wreck. I mean, we're lucky that he figured it out when he did. But on top of that, like we had to replace both rear rotors, which on the vehicle that he has, it requires the axle to be dropped and stuff like that. We had to replace a caliper, a speed sensor that was totally destroyed, along with, brake pads and all that other stuff. And at the end of the day, it was, almost a $2,000 repair. And I can't help but think that maybe we wouldn't have been that far into the weeds on that thing if
Could have been a preventable repair.
if the inspection would have been
Yeah,
sufficient.
completely understand that. So, hey, we've got another caller on the line. So let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Daryl. Daryl, you're on live with Under the Hood. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question about tire rotation.
Uh-huh.
I like to know what is the correct way to rotate tires. Like if I took off the back tire, where does that tire go?
So, Daryl, that's a great question, and the correct answer is not black and white; it's gray. And so, typically, what a lot of people will do is they'll rotate the front to the back and then cross the rear, or in other cases, straight front to back. But the honest answer, or the best answer for the vehicle, it depends on how the tires are wearing and what the condition of those tires look like when they're rotating them, and it really does make a difference on how that tire is wearing as to where a technician would put that.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, when you're driving an automobile, what is the more dangerous to drive? Is an overinflated tire or under-inflated tire?
So I guess in both those scenarios, my answer would be depending upon the amount that it's either overinflated or underinflated. But my initial answer, if say it's 10 PSI and they're both 10 PSI, either overinflated or underinflated, it's going to be more dangerous to drive a vehicle that is underinflated than overinflated. And here's why. Basically, the placard tire pressure that vehicle has, at that tire's pressure, it builds up a certain amount of heat. Each time you decrease the pressure in that tire generates more heat. And so it's more likely to, have a failure because it overheats. That's typically what happens. People don't really have blowouts. They have an underinflated tire that, it just can't handle the heat anymore and it gives up. Now, an overinflated tire, at some point, there's a structural integrity on the belt that becomes dangerous. But also, what you're doing there when you have an overinflated tire is basically you're just changing the dynamics of the contact patch of what that tire, where it's hitting the ground, and so you're wearing the center of the tire more. And so there is a degree in which both of those can be detrimental or harmful to the vehicle. But for the most part, I would say more dangerous would be an underinflated tire.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Great questions, Daryl. You have a great rest of your day, okay?
Thank you.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, very much so. Got a lot of great questions this morning. Got a lot going on. But yeah, Casey, that multi-point inspection you're talking about, and a lot of the consumers think, or just as a person getting a service, I know the thought is, man, they're just trying to sell me something. And I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to provide you services for your vehicle. So yeah, I do get that side of it. But the other side of it is that these vehicles, they'll go as many miles as you want them to go if you maintain them. And good maintenance is key. And you guys know that more than anybody on what that will do for a vehicle, and what it can provide for a vehicle. But at the end of the day, I want a consumer to know what their vehicle needs are, why they need those items, and it's up to them whether they buy it or not. I don't, at the end of the day, unless it's something safety related, because at that point, when you're making decisions on safety related items and they're not very sound decisions, now not only are you affecting yourself, but you're affecting or potentially have the effect on other motorists, from that side as well. So I'm
kind of fascinated by like how much, because I end up looking at a lot of like numbers and stuff from different dealers and independent shops and things. And I'm always kind of shocked by the discrepancy between the number of oil changes that they do and the number of tire rotations that they do. And, at a Ford store or a GM store, a lot of them use the packages, like the Works that has the tire rotation built into it, which is great. There's a lot of brands that don't offer something like that, though, and it's really easy to look at that as just an unneeded expense and to pass on it. But man, is there anything less exciting than buying tires?
And so what I just had this conversation with somebody the other day. Well, here we got a caller on the line. Let's come back to this exact topic though. But here first, let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Jason. Jason, you're on live with Under the Hood. Sorry about the wait.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking my call. Hey, quick question. I have a 2015 Ford F-150 F/4, and when you first start it up, it'll blow out white smoke, but it won't do it any time after that. It's just when you first start it up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, is that normal, or is there possibly something going on with it?
Roughly about how many miles you have on this thing?
93,000.
93,000. So, there's a couple things that could be happening, but typically white smoke on first startup is an indication of oil or burning oil into the combustion cylinders. A couple places that can come from would be the valve stem seals, and just over time they harden and aren't able to do the job that they need to do from that side of things. The other thing would be like if low tension rings, if you had some carbon buildup on your low tension rings as well. The great thing about that, and I'll kind of turn this over to Casey, is BG has a lot of products out there to help with such thing. So
yeah, ring related deposits are extremely common in today's vehicles. Low tension piston rings are exactly what they sound like. They're just thinner and they exert less pressure against the cylinder wall, which reduces friction. The less friction you have, the better fuel economy you get. The trade-off is that they make them very susceptible to deposit buildup. So, we all probably push our oil changes a little further than we ought to nowadays. I know I do. And I looked at my wife's car the other day and she was 10,000 miles since her last oil change. And I was like, what are you doing? But as those deposits build up around the rings, they don't flex and move the way that they're supposed to. And essentially you get a bad seal between the combustion chamber and the crankcase. Fuel up top, oil down below. If everything is working correctly, those two should never intermingle. But it's really, really common. I mean, I would say the majority of vehicles manufactured after about 2010 have some degree of what you're talking about. And the easy thing about it sounds scary, burning oil, but we offer a service, and the guys here at Mel Hambelton do it. We call it a performance oil service. It uses a product called EPR, which is just an oil-based cleaner. Goes in with the old oil before we do the oil change. We run it, at a increase the RPMs. We run it for about 20 minutes, get it nice and hot, and it melts down those engine oil deposits that form throughout the crankcase, but especially around the rings. Think about it as if if you got up this morning and cooked bacon in a skillet, you're going to have a lot of grease and stuff like that that's baked onto that surface when you're done, right? And rinsing it underwater, like doing a regular oil change, is probably not going to do much to help with that deposit buildup. So if you use something like a Dawn dish soap, it cuts through that grease and lifts it and gets you back to clean metal surfaces. That's what EPR does. So EPR is kind of like your dish detergent cutting through the grease. MOA, which is part of the package that you get for calling in here. MOA is kind of like that non-stick coating that you reapply after the oil change is done. So think about that as almost like a Pam cooking sprayer, like seasoning that cast iron skillet. So EPR is your cleanup, MOA is your keep clean, and that will, I almost guarantee you, that's going to really positively affect the issue you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, help what you got going on.
Yeah, I'm adamant about changing it every 5,000 miles, and you guys have always done my oil changes for me, so I'm very impressed. So my next oil change I'll be sure and have that addressed, because blowing that white smoke, that can't be good.
It's just it's something that takes a little bit extra maintenance, and I think we get it cleaned up and taken care of for sure. So
no problem at all.
Well, sounds good.
Well, Jason,
my next oil change that I have for you guys is have them address that.
Yeah. I think that's what I would do is just do, and so we call it a GDI service is what it is here at the dealership. Every kind of has their own names for it for the most part, but so next time you get it serviced, have them get that taken care of as well. So all right,
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for the call, Jason. Have a good day. got a lot of great questions this morning, so we'll go through here. Get caught back up. So Jeffrey Coates was still saying car sounds like it dies. I've seen some bad reviews on my vehicle for the electrical problem, so that's why I ask. And then he says, he also says, when you all sending out the coupon for the callers? I called last week and answered the trivia question. So Jeff, yesterday I got a return mail. So I don't know if we got your wrong email, or your wrong mailing address, or what the deal was, but I was going to have the receptionist call you today because that hit my desk last night. So I'll have them give you a buzz and see where we messed up on your address and get that sent back out to you. But it came back in the mail yesterday to us. So, and then I got Craig says, is EPR bad? Though, because it could cause other problems. How much does the service cost? So I'll let you answer as far as effect on other components in EPR, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, EPR is a really lightweight oil-based cleaner, and it's kind of meant for like regular maintenance on vehicles. My company here in Kansas, I mean, we sell 10 or 15,000 of those services a year, and we've never had an issue with one of those, which is there are certain services that come with some complications at higher mileage, but EPR, I've got no qualms about recommending that to everyone.
Yeah.
Now, that is a lightweight cleaner. So if you have oil sludging, like let's say you bought a car and it became evident that they didn't really do much maintenance on it and there's sludge in the crankcase, EPR is not a strong enough cleaner to cut through that sludge. We have a more serious service for sludge vehicles. And, occasionally you guys get a used vehicle in that requires a full system clean out.
Yes.
And so that we have what we call our dynamic engine cleaning service that is a much more robust cleaning process for those severe condition vehicles like that. But
I absolutely love the analogy you use, Casey, of the bacon grease, and I mean it truly is exactly what you did. And if you just took that pan and run water under it, so if you just pulled the plug and drained the engine oil out, you're getting new, fresh, clean oil in there. But as far as all the sludge and buildup and everything like that, it's still stuck to all the components inside from that side. And where I think EPR has its place, or the compression restoration kit definitely has its place on just routine preventative maintenance. But what I see in the day-to-day industry is how many cars I get in a day that, it's just natural instinct. I get in a vehicle, I start it up, and I look at the oil change sticker and I look at the odometer, and it just blows me away how many people don't know that they've missed a service or passed a service, have drove their vehicle several thousand miles over the service. And it just, and it's because I'm in the industry and I get to walk back in the shop every day on an occasion and go through and see how many repairs are being made that could be prevented with preventative maintenance. And that's where I really do think EPR gives you that. There's a corrective action that could be taken, which otherwise couldn't have been without just replacement of components. Now there's a point where you've gone too far, and even EPR, as good as it is in multiple services, it's gone. But there are actions that can be taken, and that product, it works so well. It's amazing how much darker the oil is after you use that stuff when you're draining it out, and just to see what comes out is impressive.
One of our favorite things to do when we're setting up a new store and they're not familiar with EPR is we'll pull a used car off of their lot. Most used vehicles get an oil change as part of their inspection process before they go onto the lot. Mm-hmm. So you take a vehicle with some miles on it and it's got oil in it that's literally got less than 10 miles on the oil. You would think clean, clear, ready to go. We put EPR in those vehicles, run them for 20 minutes, and what comes out is it looks like 20,000 mile oil. It's black, it smells, and it really does a good job of cleaning those systems up. And a lot of times, especially if you got a higher mileage vehicle, that's a difference that you notice in the pedal. You've got better compression, which equates to better performance, better fuel economy. is just a good way of getting your vehicle back to square one.
You know, when you're doing a service and you get the seat of the pants feeling that something's been done, like it takes a lot of horsepower to change something to be able to get that seat of the pants feeling. And then in addition to that, with fuel economy and stuff like that, that you gain by the service it's impressive. Okay, I've got another comment here from Craig. It says, when I start my truck up, first thing I hear like a rattle sound for a minute or two. I think it's the catalytic converter. If it is the converter, I have a Route 66 warranty. Will that part of that kind of change? So a couple different things here. Yes, so there is a possibility of the converter rattling. So what happens, there's in the converter itself, there's internal webbing inside of that thing with different metals and material. It looks like a honeycomb, basically, several different layers of honeycomb in there. And as that deteriorates or breaks up, there is a possibility of that being loose and rattling around inside of there. You know, Route 66 or just any warranty in general, pretty much every warranty offers different levels of services or coverages or things like that. And so I wouldn't be able to attest to whether that's something that they would cover or not. What I will say is a converter is considered to be an emissions related item. And so it would have a factory warranty, typically to 8 years or 80,000 miles on it. Whichever is first, time or mileage. It depends on, again, the vehicle, the manufacturer, stuff like that. Now, what I generally see outside of that is when you get to emission related components like the converters and a PCM, typically there's not very many manufacturers or extended warranty companies that cover those components because of the extended warranty that the manufacturer provides, is what I see. That doesn't necessarily mean that your particular warranty does or doesn't. So it's just something that we would have to look into for you and let you know what that would entail. So great question there as well. So
yeah, and there again, I mean, it would probably be good to come in and have it professionally diagnosed to make sure that that's what you're looking at, because catalytic converters aren't cheap. And if your warranty doesn't cover it, man, it would definitely be good to know for sure that that's what's going on
before you spend that kind of money to replace it and go from there for sure. So, well, hey, let's get the phones ringing. 316-462-3673. A lot of great questions already here this morning. You know, I had a list of things when I started out this show. I was like, I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that, and we haven't got to any of that, which is fine though. Yeah, that's no problem at all, because you guys have got a lot of great questions, and I want to answer, you know, whatever, or we'll talk about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about for sure. But you know, I had a trivia question that I was going to throw out there and put to you guys. And the first caller that called in, I wanted to give away the package for calling in, but then also I think we need to throw in a GDI service in with that package as well, because it kind of relates to a little bit about the question. So the question that I was going to ask is, the EcoBoost engine with Ford specifically has been around since 2010, and there's really two distinctive features that the EcoBoost engine brought to the table for the gasoline engine that was, I guess I'm going to say, industry leading. I don't know if that's a fair statement or not from that side, but there's two distinctive features for the EcoBoost engine. The EcoBoost engine first came out in 2010, and it was in. So I was going to have a follow-up trivia question, so I'm going to hold off on that for now, but it came out in 2010. Two distinctive features. What are they? And you have to call in to answer the show. But the person, and even if you have one, that's fine. We'll give it to you. But the first person to call in and get that gets the package as well as a GDI service. So now the GDI service, we kind of briefed on that or touched on that a little bit, but we were talking with it about the low tension rings and what that does. And, you know, I was saying how that I see a lot of people go over on time and mileage So talk about that and the effects, and then what you guys see in all the lab tests that you do as far as oil breaking down, and how that GDI service really helps take care of that issue.
Well, this is a common talking point for BG with a lot of our shops and end users. And one thing that's interesting about when you start talking about ring tension and deposit buildup and oil change intervals and stuff, this stuff really applies to gas and diesel. It's literally, especially on direct injected engines, it's a very similar situation that you run into with both of those. What happens is that, first off, oil has changed a lot over the years. I mean, oil today, just the standard bulk oil that, shops use, is head and shoulders above almost anything that was out 10 years ago. Oil's great. There's no problem with the oil, okay? But conventional or synthetic, high end or low end, every petroleum-based product, whether we're talking about oil, gear lube, transmission fluid, you name it, it has a breaking point. Right. And with time, heat, and mileage, you see that oil start to deteriorate. That's why, your best or synthetic oil, the top of the line stuff, $20 a quart, whatever it is. If we run that in the vehicle for 5,000-10,000 miles, we're going to pull the plug and we're going to see that oil is not clean and clear and nice looking. It's dark. And that dark black look to it is a sign of oxidation. It's that oil has broken down over time, and it's normal. The problem that we run into is that, even with regular oil changes and stuff, as oil breaks down, it leaves behind deposits all throughout the engine. It's a natural byproduct of time, heat, and mileage on that oil. It's just like, you burn wood, you're going to end up with ash. Does it matter what kind of wood? Does it matter how expensive the wood was or what kind of variety it was, where it's from? Not really, right? It's a natural byproduct of that combustion process. The same goes with oil. As it gets hot and it breaks down, it leaves deposits throughout the engine. So we get a lot of questions about like oil change intervals. When should I change my oil? Do I need to change my oil every 3,000, 5,000, 7,500, whatever it is? And, manufacturers vary on their recommendations for those particular vehicles. What I would tell you is that in the long-term health of your vehicle, probably the best investment you can make is just to change your oil a little more regularly than you have to, right? A lot of manufacturers are saying 10,000 miles now on oil drain intervals. And you know what? You can do that, but there's going to be consequences to letting that oil run for that long. So if, a more regular investment in basic maintenance like that is a great way to make sure that your engine stays clean. And, products like EPR and MOA, and for the diesels, we have DOC, which is our oil conditioner for diesels. A lot of what MOA and DOC are there to do is just to stabilize that oil for a longer period of time, meaning we can run it longer with confidence that we're not going to break down. Still, in my opinion, I would like to see customers change their oil at least every 5,000 miles on gasoline vehicles. Diesels, you might be a better judge of that than me.
So diesels are, they're a completely different animal, and here's why: is because it really depends on the application. And much like our multi-point inspection or a blanketed service interval, is that you can't put something out there and say at this mileage you need to do this, and at this mileage you need to do this and this and this and this. Just because of the way people use their vehicles is so much different. It really has to be, you can have, kind of a guidance or a recommendation out there, but as far as knowing when that service really needs to be performed, it's so much based upon what the consumer uses the vehicle for. And diesels, especially when you get into that realm, we have trucks that come in all the time that are upfitted with welders and rollers and bale beds, and so they may be running the thing. It may have very low miles, but it sits in idles all the time to use those other components. And so when you get into diesels, there's a mileage interval, but then there's also an hour interval for that thing, because and as well as I do that when a vehicle just sits and idles, there's benefits to that, but then there's pros and cons to that. If you're not flowing any exhaust through it and stuff like that, and it's not, the oil is, it's pumping it through the engine, but it's not at the higher RPMs. And so there's features and benefits both ways to that. And so on diesels, you really have to pay attention to both mileage intervals and hour intervals on those things.
I was working in northern Minnesota a few years back, and Duluth, there's a big port there and a lot of railways that come in, and the railroad yard had a bunch of newer Duramax trucks, and these trucks during the winter, I mean, it's kind of miserable up there during the winter.
It's just not somewhere you want to be.
Yeah. And these trucks would run for months. I mean, they never turn the trucks off, and they're really staying in the train yard most of the time. But, a shift would end. One guy would get out of the truck. Another guy would get in. The truck would never turn off. And I remember being at the local GM dealer up there and seeing some of these municipality trucks and stuff that idled a lot, had 3,000 miles on them, and the EGR cooler was just completely plugged.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. Depending on your usage of the truck and how much speed and load you're getting on that diesel is going to change, how often you should do that interval.
We really put out there, 5,000 miles for diesel oil changes. And again, talking about a gas engine and then what that interval should be for a gas engine as well. I mean, we put 5,000 miles out there, but that could vary. Somebody that starts their car up every morning and drives, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, highway speeds down the road and back. If they're starting that thing up, they're getting it up to operating temperature. They're building all the condensation out of it that was created, during sitting and overnight and during that heat up cycle. That engine oil is going to last a lot longer. Somebody that starts their vehicle up, goes 5 blocks, shuts it off, starts your vehicle up, goes, 3 or 4 miles, shuts it off. There's a lot of condensation in that engine. And then you're going to produce sludge with that. All that goes down into the pan, and creates havoc or problems from that side of things. But the other thing that I have to go along with those intervals, or the manufacturers putting that out there as the 10,000 miles or the maintenance interval lights that they have, that they say, okay, well, don't worry about changing your oil until 20% or less, or 5%, or, that some of those will go 10, 15,000 miles between intervals. And my biggest thing with that is not only, it's just cheap insurance to have good, clean oil in your engine, and it'll last longer. The manufacturer only has to warranty it until it's out of warranty. And then after that, it's on the consumer. And then once the manufacturer sold you the vehicle, their next source of revenue is parts. So if it's breaking, you got to buy parts to fix it.
We see that issue a lot with coolant. Even when I first started in the business, there was still a lot of people changing their coolant every 30,000 miles. And long life coolant, now we don't have to be that proactive about it, especially at the first round. But we see, day after day, I walk into shops and they're doing cooling system related repairs. Water pumps, thermostats, replacing radiators, hoses that have degraded and stuff at relatively lower mileages, and I'd say it's one of the more common main repairs that we see is those cooling system related things. And, a lot of times when we look at the maintenance record on that vehicle, what we don't see is a coolant service. And, manufacturers usually say something like coolant is good for 150,000 miles, or 5 years, or 7 years. And I think a lot of us fixate on that mileage interval, but chances are we've got vehicles that are due for coolant services by time interval. And, as that coolant degrades, it really starts to cause a lot of issues, corrosion buildup. It degrades the components like the water pump impeller and things like that. So coolant's another one that it's not as something that you have to do as often as an oil change, but it's important, for the long-term health of that system to make sure that, you're keeping up with that coolant and that the pH level is in balance and stuff. And I would tell you, if you're driving a vehicle that's at this point, 2016, 17 or older, and you've never had a coolant service done, it would be a good idea to go get that done before the cold weather hits. This is generally the time when we see an uptick in those services. So.
Yeah, very much so. And then, kind of also to go back on intervals on things is that if you're going 10,000 miles or 12,000 miles in between intervals, the tires need rotated, and having a qualified certified technician look under your vehicle at how things are wearing, brakes, what's going on with all the safety related items, things like that are just need to be addressed or looked at. I mean, 10,000 miles. So we figured it out. If you took a trip from Miami, Florida to Anchorage, Alaska, it was like 5,028 miles. Well, you wouldn't just go get in a vehicle and take off and drive that distance, mentally without knowing that the car was in good sound working order and somebody had looked at it to make sure that it was ready for that trip. But that's what we do each and every day when we get in a vehicle and it's already 150 or 200 or 2,000 miles over the oil change interval is, we didn't look at it. So very good. So I've got a comment here from Greg. It says, how many people flush brake fluid like they should either? That's a great comment. That is a great comment. I'll let you kind of talk to that a little bit.
You talk about like maintenance recommendations from the manufacturer, and over the years, they have really extended out things like oil change intervals, coolant services, transmission services, and you've even got some systems now that they say are sealed, they shouldn't be touched, which is another point of contention that we tend to have with them. Brake fluid is one that, like, the manufacturers, we've seen an increase in the amount of brake services that they recommend. And a lot of vehicles and manufacturers that never had brake fluid intervals in their maintenance guide before now have specific mileage-based intervals on those. And some are even as low as 15 or 20,000 miles, which is, that's soon. Brake fluid's a hydraulic fluid, and it like any hydraulic fluid. The enemy of that fluid is moisture contamination. It does two things. It causes corrosion, which can cause internal components inside the braking system to fail. You see a lot of calipers that seize up because of corrosion, lines that rot out, or, in the worst case scenario, your ABS module has a malfunction due to corrosion-based deposit buildup. That's an expensive repair. The other thing that it does is that moisture, the measure of a brake fluid, how good it is on paper, has to do with the boiling point. It's wet and dry boiling point. The higher it is, the better we regard that fluid. The more expensive it is, the more revered it is, and the safer it is long term. The water, as you guys know, boils at 212 degrees. So the more water contamination we have in that system, the lower that boiling point falls. And, when we talk about like spongy brake pedals, a lot of that has to do with moisture buildup. When that moisture starts to evaporate, when it boils off, you end up with air pockets inside the system. And now we don't have that adequate transfer of pressure from the pedal to the brakes. So not only does it feel like crap, to hit the pedal and have it be spongy and not firm, but it also, in a lot of cases, it increases your stopping distance. And so this is one of the few services that we offer that is, a safety related service. It's something that you need to know your brake fluid is not moisture contaminated. So much so, like the National Highway Safety Council says that once brake fluid reaches 2% moisture contamination, it's unfit for road use, needs to be changed out. You think about 2% in a system that maybe holds a quart or a quart and a half of fluid. It's not a whole lot. So that's something that, the guys here at Mel Hambelton can test for you. They have strips that measure copper content in the fluid, which tells you exactly how much corrosion and moisture contamination you have going on in your system. So they can take a look at your brake fluid when you bring it in for an inspection. But as a general rule, like one of the ways to keep on top of this that's easy and easy to remember is if you're touching the brakes, whether you're just swapping the pads out or you're turning the rotors or you're replacing a caliper or something like that. If you're touching the brakes, it's a good idea to just do a brake service along with it. Yep. It doesn't cost that much, and then that your fluid is adequate and safety.
And the biggest thing for me, or what I notice in this realm or brake fluid in general, is that as a consumer, when you drive a vehicle every day, you don't really notice the degradation of the pedal or how spongy it gets and stuff like that, because it's so gradual and it happens over time. But then, like, if I go get in a customer's car or something, I'm like, man, the brake pedals in this is really soft or spongy or whatever. And like, you pick it up just because you're not accustomed to it, and how it's slowly, gradually been affected over time, for sure. So, and like you said, that is something that we test, on the service drive when you come in as part of the multi-point inspection of what that fluid looks like. So, great question there, Greg. So, we talked about the GDI service and what that's done. We've had a lot of great questions or comments from the callers as well. And I think one of the things on your list was diesels and wanting to talk about diesels. So we kind of brushed into diesels and maintenance intervals or mileage versus time. But then, and I really don't even want to say this word, but the season that I guess we're getting ready to come upon, and temperature changing and it getting cooler and stuff like that. So let's talk about diesels and what's to come for those guys in the following months.
Well, so around about December, January, when we get our first big cold snap, my phone and my sales guys' phones starts blowing up. And, diesel fuel, it varies a lot, and it's seasonal. As you transition into the cold weather, companies start mixing that number 2 diesel with number 1, which is kerosene, because it increases the cold weather performance of the diesel. The last thing we want when we have a cold snap is for that fuel in your tank and in your fuel filter and in your lines to start gelling. And that's a really common thing with diesel. The temperature drops, that diesel may not have the cold weather performance that it's supposed to have, and you go to start your truck and it won't start. And it's something that it'll put you in a really unfortunate situation. And especially if you have a truck that you rely on for work, or maybe you're in the industry, you're plowing snow or something like that. To give you an example, so we work with the Kansas Department of Transportation. My guys and I do on diesel related matters. A couple years ago, we had one of those freakish cold snaps that apparently Kansas is commonly having.
Last year, man, it was it got cold, and it stayed cold for, I think, the longest stretch for quite some time. And like you said, your phone just goes nuts, and there's a flood of vehicles towed in and stuff like. Nobody was prepared for it. Nobody. No, it's just brutal. Because in Kansas, it's such a for all intents and purposes, I guess I'd say crapshoot as to what kind of weather you're going to have today versus tomorrow and stuff like that.
So KDOT called us up, and the first morning of this cold snap, they had snow to plow, they had salt to put out on the roads and stuff, and they had 38 of their trucks across the state of Kansas that were gelled and just inoperable. And so diesel fuel issues, especially when we talk about cold weather performance and stuff, that's something that you really have to be proactive about. Whether you just own a passenger vehicle that's a diesel engine and you're really only talking about your fuel tank on the vehicle, or maybe you have a business or a bulk tank, your farmers and stuff like that, it's important to make sure that your diesel's fuel is treated properly before you go into that cold weather season. And there's a couple of different products that we offer for that, and you guys offer a bunch of them. They have a great selection of diesel products for this purposes, but DFC, which is our diesel fuel conditioner, is a great option for, there's versions of it that are for just like pouring in your tank and treating in a single dose, or we also have versions that treat 250, 500, 1,000 gallons depending on capacity and stuff. But proactively treating your fuel going into those winter months when we can't plan for when it's going to be cold and stuff like that is a good little insurance policy that saves you a lot of money and hassle down the road. Now, we get into that season, the temperature drops, maybe you didn't get a chance to treat your diesel fuel beforehand. Now you've got a truck that's gelled up. There's a number of products that are available on the market for that as well. I mean, Diesel 911 being one of them. That's a big seller. It's at all the auto parts stores and stuff. These are products that you need to be very careful with if you do have a truck that's gelled. one thing about products like that have an alcohol base to them and stuff is that you can over-treat.
Yeah.
And over-treating can cause serious damage to your fuel system. So you really got to be careful when you're using those like instant thaw products and stuff like that. We offer one called Diesel Thaw that I think you guys offer and stuff, but Diesel Thaw is another one that's like get you out of a jam in a hurry, and you cannot over-treat with Diesel Thaw. So it's a great thing to just have in the under the back seat of your truck in case you end up in that situation. And but by and large, I think it's a really good idea to right now start thinking about your plan for treating the diesel as we go into those cold weather months.
You know, like I said, we don't even want to have that conversation.
It seems like it was just here.
But it is something that you definitely have to be prepared for. And, you know, as these, the systems become more and more complex, more advanced, the diesel fuel system is very precise in what it does, just to meet emissions and with the regeneration that they now have in them and everything like that. But also it is very important that it has exactly what it wants, and good clean diesel fuel is extremely important. I mean, you could we see cases all the time of either fuel contamination, whether you know, like a high pressure pump comes apart internally and sends damage into a fuel system, or fuel contamination as in we got a little bit of water in the fuel, somebody puts some DEF fluid in a fuel, or
that's a bad one.
Or there's dirt or debris in the fuel, and there are filters in place to take care of this stuff. But these things are so precise, and they're running so high a pressure, and the mist on what the injectors are spraying is so fine that you degrade that fuel system, and it's very expensive to get it back to where it needs to be. You talk about having to replace I mean, they make kits for fuel contamination purposes, which includes the lines, the high pressure pump, all the injectors, and we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to put a fuel system in one of these vehicles.
It hurts.
Now, is that something that is extremely common in the way of mechanical breakdown? Typically, no. It's from an outside source or bad fuel, or somebody that has put some DEF fuel in with their diesel from that side of things, and so or not changing fuel filters regular enough. We get into cases of that a lot too. Is there's a reason that filter's there, and it needs to be changed out.
Like your moisture separator, that's something you guys probably check every time it's an oil change.
Yep, water and fuel separator as well. And so they are very finicky systems for sure. But these trucks now, the amount of torque and horsepower that they're putting out, I mean, you can go out and pull anything you want to hook onto it for sure. So
to give you an example of like how that we have one of the highest certified automotive labs in the country at BG right downtown here in Wichita. It's right in your backyard. And we do a lot of fuel testing for our fleet customers, municipalities, even like Josh and these guys, if they get a vehicle in that they suspect something's wrong with the fuel or it's got contamination in it, they'll bring us a sample and we'll get it tested. To give you an idea on cold weather performance, though, like I did a diesel sample for a large fleet here in town this week, and cold filter plug point is the thing that we look at for cold weather performance. Is that fuel going to gel and at what temperature? The fuel by itself was plugging at 1 degree above Fahrenheit. After treating it with DFC, it went down to -17. So that's a big swing, and that can keep you off the side of the road, and generally, if we can proactively treat the fuel, we can keep you from being in one of those situations. So it's a good thing to talk to these guys about. If you have a diesel, whether it's just one vehicle or you have a fleet that you use for your company or something, talk to Josh and these guys about it when you're in for service, and they can get you on a treatment plan that'll really save you a lot of money and hassle in the long run.
Well, perfect. Well, Casey, it's been real fun. I greatly appreciate you coming out and hanging out with me for the hour and doing this. Like I said, it's a lot of fun doing the show. We had a lot of great callers. Thanks for the callers that called in. We'll go through and thank our sponsorships, which is Big Corner Creative. So for all your marketing, advertising needs, everything, whether it's window wraps, race car wraps, digital, social media, advertisement, as those guys say, just Google them. Get with Big Corner Creative down there. BG Products, all the great preventative maintenance items that we have right in here inside of Mel Hambelton Ford. Keep your vehicle going for as many miles as you want. So we appreciate the sponsorship that we have with you guys, and it's greatly appreciated for sure. So, and then Go To Rent, if you're needing a vehicle, something larger to go to grandma's house, 12 or 15 passenger van, see Stan over here at Big Corner Creative. Everybody, have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next Saturday.